Hello, everyone, and welcome back once again to the Generations Bible Study of St. Stephen Church. We're taking a look at the biblical book of Proverbs. Our study is entitled Proverbs, Mastering the Art of the Possible. My name is Ken Jobst, and I'm delighted that you are here to share this study with us. Today, we're continuing in our study of Proverbs. We understand the book of Proverbs is divided into 7 different collections of wisdom. And we are basically kicking off the second part, the second collection of wisdom, and we're looking up close in chapters 2 and 3 of the book of Proverbs. So chapter 1, verses 1 through 7 is a prelude. And then we have, or a preamble, let me put it that way. Chapter 1, verses 1 through 7 are a preamble to the book of Proverbs. And then beginning in chapter 1, verse 8 through the next, 9 chapters, that's a prologue. It's a setup. And as we talked about last week, the theme of the prologue is how do you get people motivated to pursue wisdom? So motivation is the big issue in this second collection of wisdom. But let me dive in. We're going to make a few comments as we go along. There are a couple of things here, a couple of familiar passages and a couple of principles that I want to lift up. I'll read chapter 2, then we'll move right into chapter 3. Let's take a look. Proverbs chapter 2, verse 1. My son, if you accept my words and store up my commands within you, turning your ear to wisdom, and applying your heart to understanding. Indeed, if you call out for insight and cry aloud for understanding, and if you look for it as for silver and search for it as for hidden treasure, then you will understand the fear of the Lord. Wow. Let me pause right there for a moment. So much has been said in this once again, this extended sentence. The book of Proverbs itself opens up with a sentence that is 7 verses long. And here, chapter 2 of Proverbs opens with a sentence that is, 5 verses? 6 verses long. So once again, we're encountering a long sentence divided up under many verses. But I want to call your attention to a couple of things. First of all, notice we're still talking about family language. This is wisdom that should be acquired in the home. So it's, my son, if you accept my words. Then as we continue, we see that the father is instructing the son that wisdom is the result of an intentional pursuit. Nobody accidentally becomes wise, but we have to apply ourselves to wisdom. Now, in verse 4, if you look for it as for silver and search for it as for hidden treasure, then you will understand the fear of the Lord. Let me pause right there, because we have already been told that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. That's the culmination of the very first collection in chapter 1, verses 1 through 7. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Now, what chapter 2 is telling us, and I think this is very important, the fear of the Lord is not something that is intuitive to us. The fear of the Lord may involve more than we think it does. Because watch, it's only, according to the writer of Proverbs here, it's only after we're looking for wisdom as for silver. It's only after we search for it as for hidden treasure that we come to understand the fear of the Lord. So the fear of the Lord is not entirely, completely something that is innate with us. As a matter of fact, it's something that is drawn out of us as we pursue wisdom. Because watch, verse 6, for the Lord gives wisdom. From his mouth come knowledge and understanding. Now that's another interesting point that the writer of Proverbs is making for us. The second point is that wisdom comes from the revelation of God. Wisdom does not come from our sitting down and trying to memorize a lot of Bible verses or trying to come up with a formula or trying to discover this stuff on our own. Wisdom is revelatory. Wisdom comes from God. So it's not some guru who sits on top of a mountain somewhere that arrives at wisdom. None of us on our own arrive at wisdom. Wisdom comes as a gift from God, and it is a gift that is revealed to us. God's ways are high above our ways. His thoughts are high above our thoughts. We can't just sit down and on our own limited human resource ever come near to the wisdom of God. But it's only when we are receptive. Watch, we need to be receptive to God's revelation, that God is revealing wisdom to us, and that we are pursuing that wisdom as much as you would pursue silver or as much as you would pursue hidden treasure. There was that guy that hid a treasure out in the Rocky Mountains. All these people went searching for it. Like 1,000 people tried to find the treasure based on these clues that he hid up in the mountains. They would stop at nothing to be able to get to that treasure. Well, that's the attitude that the writer of Proverbs wants us to have with respect to pursuing the wisdom of Proverbs. Now, verse 7. He holds success in store for the upright. It is a shield to those whose walk is blameless. For he guards the course of the just and protects the way of his faithful ones. Wow. If you're going to play fair, if you're going to be, as the Bible says, just, that is, you're concerned with justice, if you maintain faith in your dealings with God and with other people, then what? He says, God holds success in store for you. Wow, that's profoundly encouraging. That there is success stored up, which means it's protected and will be delivered by God for those whose walk is blameless, for those whose course is the course of justice, for those who are on the way of faithfulness. So, let's continue in verse 9. In verse 9, we have something else that we need to understand, right? Watch, here's verse 9. Then you will understand what is right and just and fair, every good path. Okay, the writer of Proverbs is telling us that there are some things that we don't completely understand, that we need to grow into our understanding with. The first of these is the fear of God. That after you pursue wisdom, then you will come to appreciate the fear of God. But it takes the fear of God to know wisdom, right? The second thing that we will come to understand, we will come to understand what is right and just and fair. Now, I lifted those three words, right and just and fair, out of, they're repeated here, having been earlier mentioned in chapter 1, verse 3. Because remember, the characteristic of a king and the characteristic of a prince who wants to become a king is that they concern themselves with what is right. That has to do with righteousness, right? To do right. And just. What is justice in any given situation? And fair, right? Even kids have the idea of fairness, right? If you're going to be the one that cuts the sandwich in two, then the other one, to be fair, should be the one who gets the first pick of which half of the sandwich they want, right? So then you'll understand what is right and just and fair, every good path. So we need to be growing in our understanding of these things. Verse 10 says, "For wisdom will enter your heart." I like that. Wisdom enters into your hearts. That's the most central place that you have, is your heart. For wisdom will enter your heart, and knowledge will be pleasant to your soul. Discretion will protect you, and understanding will guard you. Now remember, I mentioned last time that much of the book of Proverbs has to do with safety and protection. And once again, being guarded, being kept, to be kept by Jesus. And so much of that has to do with the wisdom that we find in Proverbs. Verse 12, wisdom will save you from the ways of wicked men, from men whose words are perverse. Another word there that we could use is twisted, right? But wicked men are those whose words are twisted. Have you ever had someone twist your words? You say one thing, and they pervert the words. They twist them into something else. For men whose words are perverse, who have left the straight paths and walk in dark ways, who delight in doing wrong and rejoice in the perverseness of evil, whose paths are crooked and who are devious in their ways. Now we're going to see this as a theme that gets more developed as we continue in Proverbs as well. It's those who derive pleasure from doing evil. They delight in doing wrong, and they rejoice in the perverseness of evil. And you know there are folk out there that get a tickle out of doing what's wrong. So that's being condemned here in Proverbs. So that's a paragraph about the wicked men. Now let's look at the wicked women, right? Verse 16. Wisdom will save you also from the adulterous woman, from the wayward woman with her seductive words, who has left the partner of her youth and ignored the covenant she made with God. Surely her house leads down to death, and her paths to the spirits of the dead. None who go to her return or attain the paths of life. Thus you will walk in the ways of the good and keep to the paths of the righteous. For the upright will live in the land, and the blameless will remain in it. But the wicked will be cut off from the land, and the unfaithful will be torn from it. So that's the end of chapter 2. Now, once again, just a couple of comments on the adulterous woman or the wayward woman. Once again, this is in comparison to the wicked man. So you've got the wicked man who twists things around. You've got the adulterous woman who ignores the covenant that she made before God. And her path leads where? The rejection of the covenant, the waywardness of her seductive words leads to death. Now, we're impressing upon the young prince that the decision to pursue wisdom is not only a decision that can result in long life and riches and honor, but refusing to pursue wisdom is a path that leads in death. So there's the path of life and the path of death. Any path that is not the path of life is the path of death for the writer of Proverbs. We continue in chapter 3. In chapter 3, the familial language continues. So once again, these are elements of wisdom that are designed to have been taught in the home as the prince is being reared, right? My son, do not forget my teaching, but keep my commands in your heart, for they will prolong your life many years and bring you peace and prosperity. So wisdom, right, brings prolonged life, 3 P words, prolonged life, peace, and prosperity. Let love and faithfulness never leave you. Bind them around your neck. Write them on the tablet of your heart. Once again, this is the second mention of heart in these 2 chapters. And once again, heart meaning your inmost being. You know, you can write some things on the tablet of your heart. That means not simply memorize them, but make them a part of who you are. So love and faithfulness should be written on our hearts. Then you will win favor and a good name. That is like a good reputation. The prince needs to have a good reputation. They'll win favor and a good name in the sight of God and man. Verse 5. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight. Now, that's right there. That's some memory verses right there. Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Don't leave a corner of your heart not trusting God. With all of who you are, put your complete, total, absolute faith in the Lord. Lean not on your own understanding, because your understanding of a situation necessarily leaves some things out. God can still be at work in a situation that you think is hopeless. So, in all your ways, acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight. What's this? This has got to be like a dozen times we've heard about paths already in the book of Proverbs. So paths are very, very important to God. Paths are those roadways. They are routes. They are trails that have been passed over by so many people before that they have worn down they're a road now because of the footfalls of so many people on the way. Verse 7, do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and shun evil. This will bring health to your body and nourishment to your bones. Honor the Lord with your wealth, with the first fruits of all your crops. Then your barns will be overflowing, and your vats will brim over with new wine. That is, right? When we honor, I love the way the writer of Proverbs has phrased this. Honor the Lord with your wealth. Now, as Pastor has taught us, what is wealth? Wealth is different from income. Wealth has to do with the surplus that you've been able to accumulate over time. Positive wealth and negative wealth, right? But verse 9 says, honor the Lord with what you have accumulated over your lifetime, comma, with the first fruits of all your crops. So with wealth and then with first fruits. Now the first fruit of your crop is income. So the writer of Proverbs is saying, honor God with your wealth, what you've accumulated, but also honor God with the first fruits, honor God with the income from what you have coming in. Then your barns will be filled to overflowing, and your vats will brim over with new wine. So, see, it's a promise of new crops, a promise of new wine flowing as a result of your continuing to honor the Lord with your material resources. My son, verse 11 says, my son, do not despise the Lord's discipline. Do not resent his rebuke, because the Lord disciplines those he loves. As a father, the son he delights in. So right there, right? The fact that the Lord is disciplining you is part of wisdom. By the way, that word discipline is going to occur 30-some times in the book of Proverbs. So the discipline of the Lord is there because the Lord loves us. A father who does not discipline his child is not loving the child, because the child's going to come into situations where discipline is necessary. If I don't have the discipline not to reach out to touch the hot stove, I'm going to get hurt, right? So God disciplines those he loves. If you're feeling the discipline of God in your life, understand, painful though it may be, that's God demonstrating God's love for you. Now, continuing in verse 13. Blessed are those who find wisdom and those who gain understanding, for she is more profitable than silver and yields better returns than gold. She is more precious than rubies. Nothing you desire can compare with her. Now, I want to throw this in here because I think this is important as well. We're making a lot of arguments in these chapters as motivations to pursue wisdom. And we've thrown out there for the young prince the idea of long life. We've thrown out there for the young prince the issue of honor that I'm going to talk about in just a moment. But we throw out here for the young prince the idea of profit, the idea of silver, gold, rubies, right? Now, here's the notion that the writer of Proverbs is communicating to this young prince. Wisdom has an economic value. That if you want to boil it down that way, yes, the wise have the opportunity to gain more material wealth. Well, why would that be? Well, wisdom is going to help us in the management of resources. So we're going to see as we continue, the wise manage their resources including money, energy, time, relationships. They manage them with insight. They manage them with understanding. So all of this, the economic value of wisdom might be something that we would calculate as part of human capital. Human capital has to do with that knowledge, skills, abilities that we have, that we apply to the earning of a living, or to the running of a household, that in the absence of that, you'd have to pay somebody else to do something, right? So wisdom does indeed have economic value, and it's part of human capital. Just ask yourself, if I was hiring somebody to help me run a business, would I want to hire a wise person or a fool? Well, of course, you want to hire the wise person. Now, continuing. Verse 16, long life is in her right hand, in her left hand are riches and honor. Once again, as we get to the end of the lesson, I'm going to talk about honor. But honor has been mentioned about 4 or 5 times already. Long life, riches, and honor. Her ways are pleasant ways, and all her paths are peace. I don't know if you're familiar with the Gustav Holst song, I Vow to Thee, My Country. It's a British anthem. It's a patriotic hymn. I vow to thee, my country. It was played, for those of us of a certain age, you might remember it being played at Winston Churchill's funeral back in, oh mercy, was that 1963, 1964? Also, though, it was, for another generation, it was played, I vow to thee, my country, was played, if I'm not mistaken, was played at Princess Diana's funeral. Back in 1997. Now, I mentioned that song because it includes the lyric, all her paths are peace. And this is the place where that lyric comes from. Verse 18. Now it gets interesting. Verse 18, right? She is a tree of life to those who take hold of her. Those who hold her fast will be blessed. What is wisdom? She's a tree of life. Now, I want to tell you, this is very important, this tree of wisdom. Where have we heard of that tree of wisdom before? Well, the tree of wisdom, of course, occurs in the opening chapters of Genesis. It's in the Garden of Eden. It's in that walled garden, that protected place. God said, look, don't eat of this tree for the day you eat of it, right? Now, it turns out that the tree of life is mentioned 10 times in the Bible. There's a good biblical number, right? Like 10 commandments. It's an emblem of completeness and wholeness. 10 times the tree of life is mentioned. Tree of life is mentioned 3 times in the book of Genesis. The tree of life is mentioned 3 times in the book of Revelation. Right? And the leaves of the tree are for the healing of nations. You know, it's mentioned, I believe, in chapter 3 and then in chapters 21, 22. So 3 mentions of the tree of life in Genesis, 3 mentions of the tree of life in Revelation, and there are 4 mentions of the tree of life in the book of Proverbs. By the way, it's also interesting to me that 3 is a divine number, right? So we find 3 mentions in where God is in the Garden of Eden. We find in Genesis, we find 3 mentions that allude to heaven, where God is, right, in the book of Revelation. The 4 mentions of the tree of life, 4 being an emblem of the created order, right? 4 directions, northeast, southwest, 4 seasons, winter, fall, spring, summer. So the created order, the number 4, the divine order, the number 3. So we've got a 3 in Genesis, a 3 in Revelation, but the 4 comes in the book of Proverbs. So this 4 for the tree of life, we run into it here. We're going to run into it 3 more times. What is wisdom? Wisdom is a tree of life to those who take hold of her. We'll talk about it more as we come to those other passages. Verse 19, by wisdom the Lord laid the earth's foundations. By understanding he set the heavens in place. By his knowledge the watery depths were divided, and the clouds let drop the dew. Now once again, that language right there sounds a lot like Genesis. So we've just mentioned the tree of life, and right after we mention the tree of life, we start talking about laying the earth's foundations and setting the heavens in place. See? Oh man, that's great. That's great stuff. Verse 21, my son, do not let wisdom and understanding out of your sight. Preserve sound judgment and discretion. They will be life for you, an ornament to grace your neck. Right? We've already talked about trophies, right? This is the 3rd time that we're talking about something that will grace your neck, like a winner's medal at the Olympics. Then you will go on your way in safety. There's that theme again, safety. And your foot will not stumble. When you lie down, you will not be afraid. When you lie down, your sleep will be sweet. Have no fear of sudden disaster or of the ruin that overtakes the wicked, for the Lord will be at your side and will keep your foot from being snared. Do not withhold good from those to whom it is due, when it is in your power to act. Do not say to your neighbor, come back tomorrow and I'll give it to you, when you already have it with you. Do not plot harm against your neighbor who lives trustfully near you. Do not accuse anyone for no reason when they have done you no harm. Do not envy the violent or choose any of their ways. For the Lord detests the perverse, that is, the twisted, but takes the upright into his confidence. I love that phrase, that God takes the upright into his confidence. What does that mean? That means, sometimes God will tell a faithful person what God's plans happen to be. I like that. That's great stuff. Verse 33, the Lord's curse is on the house of the wicked, but he blesses the home of the righteous. He mocks proud mockers, but shows favor to the humble and oppressed. The wise inherit honor, but fools only get shame. Now I want to lift up that very, very last phrase there in verse 35. The wise inherit honor, but fools only get shame. Now, the ancient Near East, as you know, to this day, is largely an honor and shame culture. And by honor, once again, we're talking about reputation. In America, we tend to be a merit culture, that you are who you are because you work your way, you do things. It's an individualistic culture. The terms honor and shame presume a community, that there is a community around you who will honor you. There's a community around you that will cause you to feel shame. Now, in America, once again, we're so individualistic, a lot of this stuff just washes right over us. But for the writer of Proverbs to say, look, this deal has to do with inheriting honor or getting a life full of shame, that carried a powerful punch back in the day of the readers of Proverbs. Now, I want to let you know like 5 things about honor and shame cultures that will help us as we continue to delve into the book of Proverbs. First of all, in an honor and shame culture, family defines everything. It's all about family. To whom are you related? to whom do you owe allegiance? Who made you who you are, right? So family, as a matter of fact, in the ancient Near East, one of the naming convention would be I'm so and so, Ben so and so. I'm Ken Ben Howard, which would mean I'm Ken the son of Howard. Everything was related to your family. So in an honor culture, the family's connected in everything. You know what? When I got this job, nobody asked me about who my family was. Family didn't like come into it. It's just like, okay, who are you? What do you do in America? Boom, boom, boom. So in an honor culture, family defines everything. Secondly, in an honor culture, social capital fixes anything. Which means you got to know people who know people. So your ability to connect in a network of friendships and associates and commerce and it's all a big web. So if something goes wrong in your web, let's say a disaster strikes, maybe there's an earthquake and your house gets demolished. Well, your social capital, the network of people that you know, and the people that you know, someone who knows them. So not the people that you directly know, but the people that you know, right? The outer ring, the outer circle. They can fix pretty much anything that's going to happen to you. And it's all based on relationship. And all that relationship is based on honor or shame, right? So the family is everything. Social capital can fix anything. And then the restoration of honor is something that is pursued with great vigor. If someone is dishonored, then you cannot set it straight too soon. And as a matter of fact, aggression and even up to and including violence can be something that is perceived to restore honor. As a matter of fact, in the Near East today, like ISIS, right, in the Mideast, or the Taliban, they're certainly concerned with honor because they feel culturally that they have been dishonored by the West. And so that's, the restoration of honor through bloodshed and violence is a thing, right? Now, it tangentially applies to what we're talking about here in Proverbs, but the shame part of that, right? If you don't want to start a fight for your family, you need to maintain honor. So, family defines everything. Social capital fixes anything. Aggression or sometimes even violence is the means whereby honor is restored. And then the fourth thing about these cultures is that words define your status. And when I say that, I'm saying that in many of these cultures, there are particular words that are used to, well, let me give you this example. When you would address a child, you would use different verbiage than when you address a respected elder of the community, right? So to the elder, you would say, sir. To the kid, you could just call the kid by first name. You know what, can I just say this? I know I came up in a different world. I came up in a world where when you went to school, it was always Mrs. So-and-so and Mr. So-and-so. I Mrs. and Mistered quite a bit in my coming up in school. These days, there are schools where the teacher is, the students address the teacher by their first name. And, the first time I saw that was like, wow, what's going on there? I mention that to say that in American culture, since we're not an honor and shame culture, some of these conventions of using particular ways to address people that are elders or people who are wise or revered. See, the word señor, or in Spanish culture, or the word sir, or in biblical times, right, the word Lord is an address of respect. So words define status, and the way you use those words in addressing people that you're related to defines status. And then fifth, and this fascinates me, you know that I love this. This is something that I enjoy a lot. Food conveys honor in an honor and shame culture. So if you want to communicate honor to someone, they sit at the closest seat. They sit in the seat of honor. And as a matter of fact, even I was watching a fascinating documentary not long ago about Kurdistan, and how there's a particular feast that's given once a year, and the elders of the community come together, and the way they share food, right, is that they roast entire lambs, right? So you've heard of the suckling pig. Well, they come up with like suckling lamb, and the delicacy, the best part of the lamb is the head. And so the elders are arranged at the table, and the suckling, the lamb is brought in, and the head of the lamb points to the guests of honor. So if there's 4 lambs, you arrange them so the 4 elders that are at the table get the head. It's like, oh, wow. But the idea is that food conveys honor. So what is eaten, who eats it before anybody else, what's the tradition, and in some cultures, remember, in some cultures, the honored guest eats to their fill before anybody else eats. So all of this gets wrapped up in the general heading of those unwritten rules of an honor and shame culture. The book of Proverbs is set in an honor and shame culture. And for the closing verse of chapter 3 to say, look, wisdom's going to get you honor, and fools are going to accumulate shame, that carries a big punch. Well, that's our lesson. That's our lesson for this particular week of Proverbs chapter 2 and 3. We're going to continue in chapter 4 and 5, and maybe a little bit into chapter 6. Yeah, we'll look over the next 3 chapters or so when next we come together, 4, 5, and 6. And in the meantime, God bless you. We encourage you to be a part of the phone call that we have coming out, and we'd like to get you on the mailing list. By the way, email me at kjobst@ssclive.org if you have questions or anything, and we'll respond to them, or if you need to get on our mailing list, and if you'd like to be a part of the phone call. Let's have a word of prayer together. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for the gift of wisdom. We thank you that as we pursue wisdom, we gain more and more. We thank you, Heavenly Father, in your grace that you've revealed your wisdom to us. So help us, Lord, as we gather around this tree of life, that we might be sustained and nurtured. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, once again, God bless you. Stay safe, stay healthy. And until next time, this is Ken Jobst from St. Stephen Church with the Generations Bible Study. And our lesson is called Proverbs, Mastering the Art of the Possible. We'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.